Alright, y'all, peace. I'm going to be continuing the reading. This is going to be part 3. Cyclical Time and Ismaili Gnosis by Henry Corbin. It's going to be page 12 of the ebook. Let's see. Page 14 of the book. Could be 14 or 15. It's double paged, so forgive me on that. Also, please understand that I have not really gone into the notes. Excuse me. The notes are extremely important as well, but I can't. It's just not easy to do that. So maybe every now and then I might say a note, let you know what's up. All right, we're going to start from the paragraph that I got cut off at from the last time. Okay, so here we go. And this is still dealing with the breaking down of ZERVANism, Mazdaism, the 12 zodiac signs and their celestial meanings. Um, Getting into that. So far, the drama has resulted from the clash between the power of light, aided by ZERVAN or subordinated to him, and a contrary power which is wholly external, as in pure Mazdaism. But now this clash is conceived as a drama within the supreme deity himself, because in the person of ZERVAN, this supreme Godhead contains both the elevation of light and the depth of darkness. This then is the vision of integral ZERVANism. Its schema has been transmitted to us by Christian sources, notably the Armenian writer Esnik. It need not surprise us that polemical considerations have dispelled every trace of great mythical inspiration and introduced a certain element of the ridiculous. Before anything existed, the heavens or the earth or any creation, the Magi are made to say in these texts, ZERVAN existed. And from the outset, the name of ZERVAN holds a twofold meaning, that of destiny, with which we are already familiar, and that other meaning, no less fraught with consequences, of celestial glory or light, Gshvar, or Xvarr, the keystone of Mazdean theosophy. That's amazing that that's the keystone of Mazdean theosophy. It is further related that for 1 millennium, ZERVAN would be called Ahura Mazda, and who would be the creator of the heavens and the earth. Let me see here. Okay. 14, 15, 16. Okay. But then a doubt arose in ZERVAN's mind. Is the solitary liturgy not in vain? Hold on one second, y'all. 16. Okay, no, we good. I'm just trying to make sure. It is further related that for 1 millennium, ZERVAN performed sacrifices in order that a son might be born to him, a son who would be called Ormazde, and who would be the creator of the heavens and the earth. Sorry, y'all. But then a doubt arose in ZERVAN's mind. Is this solitary liturgy not in vain? Is it effective? Would Ahura Mazda, the child of this thought and his desire, really be born? And then, from this thought and his doubt, 2 beings were conceived. One was Ahura Mazda, child of his liturgical act; the other Adamant, the child of the shadow, of the darkness of his doubt. But at first ZERVAN knew only that they were 2 and vowed. Well, hold on. But at first ZERVAN knew only that they were 2 and vowed that he would bestow the sacerdotal kingdom upon the first one to appear. That was 2 as in the number. This vow was known to Ahura Mazda. With the loyalty and simplicity of a being of light, he informed Adamant, who by himself, with his retarded knowledge, would have known nothing. No sooner did he learn this than he found a way of being born prematurely, as it were, and appeared before his father, who was also his mother. It sounds like Ayaldabath and Sophia. ZERVAN asked him, "Who art thou?" "I am thy son." And the enraged ZERVAN replied, "My son is fragrant and luminous. Thou art dark and foul-smelling. And now Uhud Mazda, born in due time, presented himself luminous and fragrant to ZERVAN, who realized at once that this was his son, for whom he had performed long liturgical rites. He wished to invest him with the royal priesthood and gave him his blessing. But Adamant intervened and reminded ZERVAN of his vow. In order not to break the vow, ZERVAN resolved on a compromise. 0 false maleficent one. Oh, no, I'm sorry. O false maleficent one. To thee will be given a reign of 9,000 years, and Ahura Mazda will be sovereign over thee. After 9,000 years, Ahura Mazda will reign, and all that he desires to do, that he will do. Thus, the dominant theme of ZERVANism imposes a thesis which would be intolerable to pure Zoroastrian Mazdaism, the primogeniture of Adamant. And number 9 is important as well, when they were talking about the 9,000 years. Still more serious, Adamant is the prince of this world, and his reign is legitimate, since ZERVAN, to avoid breaking his vow, was himself compelled to confer the kingship upon him. Ahura Mazda is sovereign, to be sure, but he does not reign. He will reign only at the end of this aeon, at the end of the 9,000 years. The cycle of the millennia is not even imposed by Mazda himself, as in the Mazdian dramaturgy. It is decided upon by ZERVAN as a compromise, because to eliminate the shadow, the darkness engendered by his doubt, he must agree to limit himself. Limited time, our aeon, the time of our world, is the repentance of ZERVAN the Eternal. Very key. The dialectic of yes and no, thus introduced into the Godhead, brings forth a cosmogony comparable to that which Schelling set out to develop speculatively in his sketch on the ages of the world. Here, likewise, the contradiction of yes and no, introduced into eternity itself, shatters eternity and sets a series of eternities or aeons in place of a single one. Eternity resolves into time. It is in this contradiction that the succession of the ages of the world originates. The cycle of Adamant will be followed by a new aeon, that of Ahura Mazda. Similarly, in the Ismailian theosophy, it is the two phases, the light and darkness, of the angel, who is the demiurge of our cosmos, which will motivate the alternation of cycles of epiphany and occultation. The eschatological resolution of the present aeon, it is true, is similar in ZERVANism and in pure Mazdaism. It is the elimination of the power of darkness, but infinite time, detached from Ahura Mazda and rising above him on the horizon of all the creatures of light, is also a whole new archetypal zone, which now, together with this infinite, stretches out immeasurably. We have already mentioned the Mazdian concept of the Fravartis, or Fravashi, the Farvakar, the Ferrorir, the Fororir. These are celestial archetypes of the creatures of light. Very important. These are the Mazdian concept of the celestial archetypes of the creatures of light. These are the Pravartis, acting as the tutelary angels of earthly creatures. Ahura Mazda revealed to his prophet that without their aid and support, he would be unable to defend his creation against Adamant's assault. Now, the episode of a pre-existential choice is at the root of the whole Mazdian anthropology and assuredly provides the clearest motive for the naming of these feminine archetypal entities as those who have chosen. In the prologue of the millennia belonging to the period of mixture, Ahura Mazda confronted the Pravartis of human beings with a free choice, which is at the origin of their destiny. That is to say, their time, their aeon. Very, very key. Either they might dwell in heaven, safe from the ravages of Adamant. And you can use that term heaven how you want to, right? We're not tied to any dogma. We're just utilizing the knowledge and the wisdom within these scripts here. Just remember that always. So, or they might descend and be incarnated in material bodies in order to combat Ahriman in the earthly world. The Fravartis elect to join battle on earth, and now a kind of duplication occurs. In the end, the incarnated Fravarti is identified with the soul, but this soul does not cease to possess an archetypal dimension, since its celestial condition was to be an archetype. It is in point of fact only the person and earthly part of a whole, of a syzygy, completed by a celestial person, another self, which is its destiny, the angel soul, the celestial self, which comes to meet it after death on the road to the Sinvat bridge, which is accordingly referred to in the text as the soul on the road, the soul on the road, and which calls itself Diana. Just a quick pause. It's one of the most important parts in the book. I had read that part at least 5 times before I kept going, because I felt so, I just had these feelings within. It's amazing. Just understand that was an amazing section right there. You got to get the book. A whole chivalric ethic hangs from this conception. To lose this archetypal dimension is literally to cease to have an angel. It is to die as a soul can die, to cease to answer for one's celestial partner, which can then no longer answer for its earthly soul. A quick pause. That is very key. That is the main goal to put it in lame, simple words, negative energy against the soul, trying to transfigure the earth into a spiritual state. It is the negative energy's goal, personified as Ahriman in these religious texts here. That is against the soul itself trying to progress, which is the Pravartis, who made the decision to battle for the light being before they even existed in the material world. So that goes very, very far into a lot of things. If you study other religions, other spiritual systems, and the connections, you'll see that these things are all connected, and they have different ways of explaining it. And these people have combined, unbeknownst to themselves, ancient literature. They just have mixed it up due to their own, constraints, their own time frame and reality, their religious states and things like that. But the information is great, grand, still beautiful, and still a necessary part of spiritual progress for us. I mean, this is Ismaili Gnosis. I would never in my life thought that I would be even reading anything dealing with Iranian philosophy or spirituality or anything, and it has nothing to do with that. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's another thing. Get rid of racism. Get rid of different people, that ain't nah. Because all of this shit belongs to all of us, and that's that. So here we go. Let's see. He is one whose companions share his combat, whose suffering they assume, and whom they do not betray. Excuse me. In the ZERVANite ethics, the Pravartis are no longer merely the knights of Ormazda, but are his suffering members, those in whom he endures affliction, because here Ormazda assumes the features of the active and suffering God, foreshadowing the primordial man of Manichaeism, excuse me. But beyond this, there is a surprising feature, to which philosophical reflection, which ought to draw its consequences, seems to have devoted little attention. The Mazdian ontology of the celestial archetypes accords to each of them a Pravarti. The archangels, or of course to each of them a Pravarti, meaning that Pravartis have Pravartis. The archangels are Amarta Spanta. I believe that's what it meant. The archangels, the angels, the Azata, Izat, have each their Pravarti. Yes, that's what they meant. More important still, Ahura Mazda himself has his Pravarti. But this angel of Ahura Mazda cannot then be like the angel of Yahweh, who stands before his face and manifests him to his creatures. Rather, it is the angel who goes ahead of him because he reveals him to himself and manifests to him the horizon, the eternal advent of unlimited ZERVAN. Thus, the archetypes have in turn their angels, and Ahura Mazda himself, who conceives them as conscious and active powers, also has his own archetypal archangel. But this extraordinary intuition projecting the archetypes into a new archetypal dimension is intelligible only if this dimension opens up a distance and a distinction within eternity itself. Then Ahura Mazda's being must not be an immutable and immobile existence, the pure act of the rational theodicies, but must be projected into the dimension of an eternal future. His angel stands in the same relation to Ahura Mazda as Diana, the Aeon, to the human being, the incarnate Pravarti, who, eschatologically speaking, attains to his angel only to be drawn with him into a new height, as though a new archetypal archangel forever preceded their syzygy. All Ahura Mazda and all the beings of the celestial universe are drawn into the ascending movement of limitless eternities, toward horizons and toward creative acts of thought belonging to universes still informulable. Here then we may speak of a Gothic style of cosmology. In this sense, the ZERVANite horizon, that of absolute time without shore, without origin, and without end, would truly be in keeping with the Mazdian universe of those archetypal archangels who, far from being fixed, multiply beyond themselves, always sending out another angel ahead of themselves. Still, there remains something in the schema of integral Zervanism that cannot be reduced to the needs of uncompromising Mazdaism. In its Zervanite dramaturgy, there remains an ambiguity capable of compromising that prodigious infinite elan, an ambiguity capable of beguiling the incarnated Pravartis into a betrayal that would deprive them of their dimension of light. Wow, yo. For Adamant is the legitimate prince of this world. When he says that he's legitimate, that's dealing with the 9,000 years that was given to him to reign. Moreover, although he is a power of darkness, this darkness is an aspect of the Supreme Godhead itself. I'm going to repeat that one more time. For Ahriman is the legitimate prince of this world. Moreover, although he is a power of darkness, this darkness is an aspect of the Supreme Godhead itself. To affirm this world is assuredly to serve the power of darkness, but is it not also to serve the Godhead which itself gave birth to this darkness and made of this time the time of its wrath, of its renunciation of being itself? And such indeed seems to be the secret of the nocturnal cult which, according to Plutarch, certain magi devoted to Ahriman. Thus, the effort to surmount radical dualism ends by establishing the darkness as the norm of the day. What was the day of the angel is inverted into the day of Ahriman. Repeat. What was the day of the angel is inverted into the day of Adamant, in order that the dawn of resurrection may shine upon the night of this false day, in order that the day which will be the negation of this negation may grow, The ZERVANite scheme must undergo certain dramaturgical alterations. Unlike ZERVANized Mazdaism or Mazdianized ZERVAnism, integral ZERVAnism may be preserved in an aspect of its essential idea, the idea of a unity mediating between the duality of light and darkness. Repeat, the idea of a unity mediating between the duality of light and darkness, but on condition that this unity shall cease to be at the level of the Supreme Godhead and regress to an ontologically subsequent rank. This section is called Dramaturgical Alterations. Here, unfortunately, we can speak of these dramaturgical changes only briefly, to the degree in which they prepare us for the periods and cycles of the Ismaili mytho-history. The alterations of the ZERVANite dramaturgy are attested by Greek and Islamic sources. In his 36th oration, Dion of Prusa has transmitted the famous myth of the Chariot of the Magi, which seems to have come from a psalter belonging to the Magi, celebrating the mysteries of Mithras, and which might be compared to the famous visions of Ezekiel. The chariot is harnessed to 4 chargers, typifying the elements, consecrated to the 4 gods which they respectfully represent. One of them is endowed with wings, and is of a beauty and splendor surpassing the apparent animal nature of its myth. It is the soul of the invisible guide, and it is forever in movement through all the periods that follow one upon another unceasingly throughout the eternities. Quick repeat about Ezekiel's chariot. The chariot is harnessed to 4 chargers, typifying the elements, consecrated to the 4 gods, which they respectfully represent. One of them is endowed with wings, and is of a beauty and splendor surpassing the apparent animal nature of its myth. It is the soul of the invisible guide, and it is forever in movement through all the periods that follow, one upon another unceasingly throughout the centuries. In it we may recognize Ahura Mazda as the soul of ZERVAN, and here again ZERVAN is expressly identified with eternal wisdom. Why? Because his soul is eternal wisdom, which is Ahura Mazda. Although Ahura Mazda himself has the more than likely eternal wisdom itself as his archangel. Okay, in mentioning the astonishing Magian rite to which we shall refer below, Plutarch introduces a new figure among the dramatis personae, Mithras, the Mediator. Here, a new ZERVANite tetrad is presupposed: ZERVAN, Ahura Mazda, Adamant, Mithras. It is precisely this idea of a mediator that is emphasized in the account of ZERVAnism given by Shahrastani, 12th century, the estimable Persian historian of religions. It is this idea which radically alters the schema of integral ZERVAnism and puts an end to all ambiguity in its anthropology and ethics. Darkness and light do not confront each other from the very origin in an irreducible dualism, but are born from the same being who makes time temporalize itself, an eminently ZERVANite idea. Yet this being, the superior and mediating unity in which the contraries originate, is no longer the absolute original Godhead. ZERVAN is one of the beings of the level, ZERVAN is one of the beings of light, the greatest among the angels. Thus, there is a shift, a regression of the level at which duality, and with it cyclic time, bursts forth. The object of ZERVAN's doubt is expressed in more metaphysical terms than in Esnic's myth. Perhaps this universe is nothing, or Then, in the words of those whom Shalastani calls the Gaia-Martians, from the word Gaia-Mart, the primordial anthropos, if I had an adversary, what would he be like? Here we have the fascination of the void and the thought of the other, a thought which as such engenders that other, so unleashing a combat in heaven which will endure for 3 millennia. It is then the angels as a whole who here fulfill the function of Mithras, or of the Archangel Michael, and their mediating role permits us to recognize also their features in those of the angel Metatron, who dominates so great a part of the mystical literature of the Jews. In the account of Sharastani, the angels decree for Adamant a time of 7 millennia, during which the world will be given over to him, but at the end of which he will be compelled to return it to the light. We shall see that in the Ismaili schema of mythos history, the angel corresponding to the angel ZERVAN not only is the mediator who gives rise to light and darkness, as well as their respective cycles, but also is the mediator of the victory over darkness, the mediator of his own victory over himself. To this victory, all his companions made in his image must contribute, his companions whose archetype he is. This they must do by undertaking in turns a combat punctuated by heptads of millennia. In concluding his account of the angelic mediation, Shah Rastani recalls the fundamental episode of the Fravarti's choice and of their descent to earth. Here, the combat of the Archangel Michael has its parallel, not in the idea of a fall of the angels, but in a voluntary descent, a voluntary renunciation of the abode of light in favor of the perilous combat on earth. And a similar angelological structure will be formulated in the Ismaili anthropology. Stop right there for part 4, which will be next.